So the first one, this is the illustrative essay. And yes, this is the topic about space exploration. Whether should we spend money on space exploration or not? So when it's come to space exploration, yes, we can talk about aliens. This is the exceptional topics that you can go a little bit out of the box, one of those kind of answer. So to start off with, let's sorry. So the thesis statement here, definitely it's the introductions to the first few statement would be one of those hook, and then saying that, okay, this and that. So as you can see at the top here, like the first beginning of these things, yes, it's kind of like a restatement, a rephrase of the question. Yes, you can do it. When you write an essay and you feel like you run out of ideas, you don't know what to start off with, yes, one of the way to start off your essay is by rephrase, paraphrase the questions. However, I would say that let's take this as your last resource, as the last option. If you can start with something else, it would be better. But yes, definitely when we talk about introduction, you need some kind of intro, something to start off with before you reaching to like the point of what you want to mention. But if you don't totally run out of ideas, or you just like, I don't know what to start off with, paraphrase the question is one of the easiest way. But for me, let's like you may start off with like one of those generalization techniques, or maybe questions, or maybe even tell about stories that relate to the topic. So one of those techniques often to be something that kind of should be able to apply to most topics. And then moving to the last statement, which is the thesis statement. So yes, I completely disagree with this opinion for two reasons. So yes, normally we should mention the topic. However, the author actually go with like, I completely disagree with the opinion. So use this thing instead. Say like completely with this opinion. However, so for me, normally I would not suggest saying something like this, because when you say like I completely disagree with the topics, sometimes some question they do have like some people think about this, other people think about that. And when you say like you completely agree or disagree with this opinion, the audience don't know or don't sure whether what do you agree or disagree on. So I would suggest that a better way, instead of you say like you completely agree with this opinion or you completely disagree with it with the opinions. So be specific. Be specific on what you agree or disagree with. Like this one, it's gonna be like, however, I believe space exploration is worth the investment, just like I mentioned in the previous slide, or I think investing in a space exploration is a good idea, would be better mentioned. It would be better to mention what you referring to. In this case, if you feel like, okay, space, okay, mention something like space exploration, the word space exploration. So be specific instead of just saying like completely agree or disagree with this opinion. Be specific in terms like what opinion you agree or disagree on. And yes, for two reasons would make this the indirect thesis statement. So just in general, and because it is an illustrative, you probably seen the connection is that the first paragraph, the first body paragraph, and the second one would be connected, because when it's come to illustrative essay, the answer, the main idea would be one of those that come from the same category. So when it's come from the same group, same category, when you start your body paragraph, you can start off with the time order transition. like first of all, second, the sense in those case. And for the topic sentence, the first statement would be the one that it is the topic sentence, this case. So first of all, many of the technology we take for granted today were originally thanks to the space explorations. So this would be the topic sentence. And for the main idea, one of the things that when we talk about main idea is like the key concepts, or some would say like this is the key, it's like key concept or the key idea. So I think from some of your work is that you highlight the details. When we talk about main idea or key concept, it's often to be like, short phrase or just a word, which the rest of the paragraph kind of trying to provide explanation to this one. So the first reason why we should go for space exploration is that we say that the main idea is the technologies that we receive here. Many technologies that we take it for granted today were originally thanks to the space explorations. So the main idea here is like, because of space exploration, we got the technology, many technologies. So this would be the main idea. And if you read the rest here, the rest would be the detail, or in this case, they are the explanations. And yes, if we back to the paragraph structure, this would be the supporting sentence. The reason that I said that these are supporting sentence, because if you read the details, you're going to see that the author actually come up with examples like satellite technology, for examples. So the author choose or select certain technology to explain what technologies or how the technology is being invented because of space exploration, which is, in this case, they mentioned like two. The first technology that occur because of space exploration, the first one would be satellite. The second one is the new lightweight materials, which they invent because of space explorations. But the rest of the details would be the main idea. I'm sorry, the supporting sentence. The main idea would be many of the technologies. And moving to the second body paragraph, the first sentence, definitely, we cannot foresee the distant futures, so we ought to develop the capability to escape from the earth. So yes, this thing is the main idea. The main, this sentence would be the topic sentence, and the main idea is we should go for space exploration in order to adopt the capability to escape from the earth. So this is the key concept. So if you read the details again, they kind of provide the reasons why we need to escape, why we should develop alternatives or develop the ways to escape from the earth, because we see that, okay, long time space exploration, they are knowledgeable, and now we have some kind of environmental destruction, and which it might be good if we can have alternatives just in case the earth is not inhabitable. And moving to the last one, the conclusions. The summary definitely would be, so the whole thing here. Okay. While we undoubtedly face serious problems on our planet, it is imperative. Imperative means significance, means important. Imperative that we continue to explore space. So the first statement technically supports the idea of we should do space exploration. The second sentence is the one that provides a summary of the main idea. This will promote further technological advance as well as provide a possible means to escape from the Earth should the Earth become uninhabitable in the future. So the summary of the first main idea and the second main idea. Last but not least, the last statement. Ideally, all nations should cooperate in the advancement of space research. So this one would be the one that I would say the final comment that shows suggestions or recommendations. Because they say that we should cooperate. So provide a recommendation that all countries should come together for the advancement of space explorations. So here are the illustrative essay. Most of you get it right, but when it's come to identify the main idea, I think some of you kind of misunderstand about the main idea and the supporting details. So as you can see here, when it's come to main idea, like many of the technology, these are the main idea. The rest of the body paragraph would be explanation. So it is the supporting sentence because it provides details of what are the technologies. And for the second ones, how we develop the capability to escape from the Earth. So you're gonna see the detail. It's explained why we need to develop those ability. So that would be the first one. Moving on to the next one. So the next one here is definitely look different from the previous. Not from previous. Yes, look different from the previous one and the other because this is the essay that provide reference. So as you can see, these informations from the sentence, the first sentence, China is one of the largest population in the world that has approximately 132 people per square meter. And because of this information, you probably cannot come up with yourself. And because it's kind of some kind of statistic and data, definitely it would be best to provide reference along with the information that we provide. This type of reference we call the APA reference. So this is the APA style. This is the APA citations. Reference and citation mean the same thing, but when it's provide the resource of where the information can be filed. However, the one that you see in text, we call citations. So this one we list here, it's actually proper name would be citation. This is the citation. And the one with like DOI number, with like the full author names, with the name of the title of the essay, the name of the research, that one called reference or bibliography. Bibliography. Yeah, reference or bibliography. Normally, the easiest way to provide a citation is that you provide the details that you kind of paraphrase or take it from somewhere, and then you provide reference at the end. So the citation at the end before the full stop. So this will list and comma and 2011. So it means that this information is come from one source, only one source. Yes, you can have more than one source. You can have 5 sources. That's okay. The APA style would be written by provide the last name of the author and the year. So this is like reference style. The way that you provide the reference, the citation, it depends on the citation style that you apply. Normally in my understanding, like social science, business, you go for APA normally. However, like the science field often go for Vancouver or MLA, so the style probably differs according to your field of study. If it's like the Vancouver, normally it's not going to be last name, the author last name, and the year. Normally it's just going to be like one. So it's just going to be number according to the order of your reference. So it's going to be one, it just be like 5, 6, 7, and it can come in variety of appearance. Sometimes it's number in bracket, but sometimes it's in the square bracket. Sometimes it's like superscript version. So we can have a look at that later. And so the easiest simple way to add the result add the reference. So to add the citation, it's put it at the very end of your sentence. Another way is this. So have a look at the blue highlight. So the sentence says. So the sentence says something like according to Houston's and then the year. So as you can see, Willis and Houston's, the way that the author writes the reference, the citation is totally different. So the Willis is the one that the author put it like at the end of the data. However, for Hinson here, it's like you put the citation first and the data come after. So compare this, okay, maybe to according to Hughes and the information that been cited, it's come after the word Hughes. So this one is too long. So Hinson, and then 2013, and then the cited information is come in the green highlight. So the one after Hinson. When you provide a citation, 2 ways for you to provide. The most common way would be the Willis, the one that you put at the end. Okay, put your source at the very end of the data. That is the most common one, the easiest to do ones, which I think a lot of people prefer this style. However, sometimes you're gonna see that time to time, but not often or not always. Some author do provide something like according to this, based on to this person, and the name Hinson here is like the author last name. The author last names according to, based on, regarding to, regardless to, something like then the name. So this is the second style that you can use to cite to provide the source for your information. However, the second one here, Houston's, according to Houston here, this style often used when you want to emphasize the author as much as the data. So you want to emphasize the author, so like who creating this, who providing this information. So it means that you want to emphasize the author, not just the data. The first method we list here, you did not want to like emphasize the author, you want to emphasize only the data. However, sometimes some researcher, when they provide the information, they want to say something like, this information come from famous people, come from this, wow, the one. And you want to make it like include in your and they want to include in their writing and make their writing stronger. So that's why they kind of include the author names as well. So if you want to emphasize like who create, who made, who wrote the data, yes, you might provide your source, say something like according to the author last name and then year. For APA, it's going to be year till so 2013. For Vancouver people, it's going to be like number. So a different style. We can have a look at that later. And then followed by the details. Two-way. So two-way to provide citations at the very end or integrated as part of your sentence. So the second one is the one that I call the Hinson, that's what I call integrated, because as you can see, like the word Hinson here is actually like part of the sentence. So integrated your sentence as part of your sentence. Yeah. Either way are great. Both of them, both version are great, are okay. However, normally, yes, you would see when you go through research paper, a lot of people go with like the first one where they put source at the end. However, if you want to emphasize to provide in this information, probably like time to time. It's not like you're probably not going to use like so often as the first one, the first citation style. You can go for the second one, which is look like Hinson here. So two ways for you to include your citations, the source in your writing. Either way are great. And yes, you can have more than one source. This one is just like according to one person, but you can add like according to two sources at the same time, which is okay, no worry. Okay, moving back to our essay component. For the thesis statement, the first one, it's definitely quite clear, is that the first one, the last sentence is the thesis statement, and the first one, the topic would be clear justification. Justification is mean reasons. So the topic would be like why government should relax one-child policy. This would be the topic. Controlling idea would be due to many reasons. Clear justification due to many reasons. Yeah, that would be the controlling idea. So again, this would be a better way to develop your thesis statement instead of saying like you agree or disagree with opinion with this statement. It would be better to be specific, like what do you agree on? What do you disagree at? Like this one, the author actually did not include the word agree or disagree, just go for like, okay, there are clear justification why government should relax one-child policy. When we say something like relax a policy, it doesn't mean like we should stop using it. It means that we don't enforce the policy so strictly. We kind of introduce the policy, but if your people don't want to follow it, it's okay. If you want to follow it, it's okay. If you don't want, it's okay as well. So that's what it means by relax. So technically, we introduce it, but we kind of don't strict with the enforcement that much. And then moving on to the first body paragraph, the topic sentence is definitely going to be the first statement. So again, if you recall, because it is, this one is the argumentative. Okay, sorry. So this one is argumentative. This one is argumentative part essay. So the one that you need to take positions. When you take position, it means that most of your reasons come from the same group. So as you can see, the first and second body paragraph come from the reasons come from the same positions, which is reason why we should or the government should relax the policy. The first reason is about this thing can solve abortion problems. So solving abortion problems would be the first main idea. And the rest of the details would be, yes, it is the supporting. The rest of the details here would be the supporting, the explanations. So yes, it is the supporting sentence. So they said that, okay, why if you relax, why abortion problems gonna go down? Typically, according to this person, this thought, that. And at the very end, the last sentence of the first body paragraph, it actually, this one is like, to reducing this brutal problems, government should relax the policy. This sentence is actually the concluding sentence, which you don't normally see, but you you don't normally see when it's come to like essay writing to see concluding sentence, but yet you can include in it. That's why I say for the concluding sentence, it's optional, whether you're going to include or not include in your writing. And moving on to the second ones, the main idea is that the solving or relaxing the policy can solve some social problems. So solve social problems. And the detail on the rest one of the problems. So because they say like they can solve social problems, that's why in the details you're gonna see like the specific social problems that is being mentioned, like what social problems being solved, or let's say make it less worse, like problems like less problems like left behind problems gonna be at least better solved in somehow, or problems like crime gonna be solved. The author provide examples in terms of social problems in order to help you as the audience see what the argument, like what the specific argument being made here. So you're gonna see the details supporting sentence. And again, this one is one of those one kind that the last statement, as a result, government should relax the policy to solve these two problems. So the last one would be concluding sentence. Again, it's optional, but if you want to include it, that's up to you. And the unique about argumentative is that you need to provide reason from the opposing view as well. So when you start reason from the opposing view, you might start with something like, on the other hand. On the other hand, some people argue that it might be benefit. Main idea is like, it might be benefit to people. And then the benefits here is like, you can limit the population, the economy gonna be better. So this and that would be the explanation for this paragraph. Yes, this body paragraph number 3, the detail is quite short. It would be better to be like balanced with the first and the second. The last one seemed to be too short. And last one, summary. Actually, everything here. Everything here are the summary. In conclusion, because the population in China is overabundantly, government have one-child policy to limit population, but I strongly disagree with the policy. Relaxing one-child policy can solve abortions and social problems. So for the conclusion paragraph, this one is everything is the summary. Start with the first sentence, just emphasize the idea of I disagree with this policy. Technically, it means like relaxing the policy. And the second statement is where where the author summarized the main idea. Relaxing the policy, it can solve this and that. So summarizing it. Yes, this paragraph, this essay do not have the final comment. Again, final comment is just an option. If you want to include it, it's okay. If you don't want, it's okay as well. But make sure you don't have one sentence per paragraph. Next one. This one is the one that asks you to write both sides. So both sides of this argument and give your opinion. So this means that this paragraph, this essay is the discursive essay. Discursive essay. And start off with there's like ever increasing technology, this and that in classroom. This can provide positive and negative feedback, this and that. Very, very short and simple styles of writing for the thesis statement. The last sentence here is the thesis statement stating that this essay will discuss both point of view. It's okay to be used, it's okay. Or if you want to write a better thesis statement, you might go with something like, because you say like both point of view here, so you might say something like both, if you, in this case, both point of view, it means both positive and negative things about this thing. So it will be better if like in your thesis statements, you say something like, this essay will discuss both positive and negative consequence of integrating computer or using computer in education would be even better. This one is the one that you see in this essay is not wrong, but you can do better by stating the topic or what you're gonna write instead of just play general like both view, discuss both sides. It's quite very not unspecific. And if you read this one, you're gonna see that the first and the second body paragraph, it's actually things that come from different view, so different sides, which is why you see something like it is clear that the internet has provided students with access to more information than ever. So yes, this one is the positive of computer. And the main idea here would be access to more information than ever before would be the main idea for the first one. And then the rest would be like moreover, later they can search just a button, touch of a button. It is therefore agreed that technology is very worthwhile tool for educations, and take example as like something like Wikipedia, this and that. So you can just type and get the details. So the rest of the paragraph would be supporting the explanation. And because it's discursive, you need to present ideas argument from both sides. So you're going to see that the second paragraph, second body paragraph, actually discuss the main idea that come from the opposite side. However, to show a clear separation that it's not reason from the same side, it reason from the opposite sides. You can start the paragraph with transitional word, like one of those contrasting, that mean contrast, that mean but. However, nevertheless, although on the other hand, you can go with that. This case, the author go with the word however, in order to present the negative usage about computer. So the second one is the negative. Many disagree and feel that technology deprive people of real human interactions. So deprive people of real human interaction would be the main idea for the second one. And yes, the rest would be the explanation of how this deprive people of real human interaction. Last but not least, the conclusion would be the first statement. The first statement would be the one that provides a summary, because you can see that while the benefits it allows students to tap into limited source of information. So this is the positive, and feel that it should be aware because it's not allowed to go face to face. So this one is definitely to summary of the negative. And then the next sentence says something like this: agree with that this beneficial, because if you recall, the question asks you to provide your opinions. So the author first start with summarize the main idea, followed by providing their opinion inside. And last but not least, they actually provide a final comment. However, as long as we are careful to keep in mind the importance of human interaction in education, the education benefits are clearly positive. So maybe like share insight. This one would be the final comment. Sharing insight. So instead of going like recommendation, you can go with like the sharing the insight as well. So far, so good. Anybody have any questions? Okay, moving on to the next one. Hold tight. We have a couple more to go through. The next one is talking about disease that more prevalent now, which is the disease called obesity. And the questions ask you to talk about the cause and solution. When the question asks you to talk about cause and solution, clearly when you write these statements, you need to say that, okay, this essay gonna talk about cause and solutions. because the question asks you to do it. So let's be straightforward and do whatever the question asks you to do. That is the key. If you answer only the cause, you might get half of the score technically. Since the question asks you to write cause and solutions, and if you only do like write or answer just for the cause or answer for the solutions, your essay might be considered incomplete. Or technically you're not gonna get a lot high score because your essay do not answer all questions, the question that being given, just half of it. So you're not gonna get a lot high score if you do just one part. You need to do two parts, which is cause and solutions. I start, see that the first statement, to make it easy, so go with something like, since we have to talk about the cause, just say something like, okay, now the first cause of obesity is junk food. So yes, junk food would be main idea, which is the cause. The junk food would be the cause, and then explain why children often, and then the details go, children eat a lot of junk food, this and that, why it's not good, why this and that. So the detail follows. And this one is the one that combine cause and solution together in a paragraph. And then you can see that the author actually introduced the solution. The author introduced the solution, which is the solution for eating junk food is that since children love junk food, we need to teach them. The solution would be teach them how to cook. I know it's kind of absurd somehow, but yeah, one of the solution is teach them how to cook and ban junk food and fizzy drink in school. Fizzy drink is Coke, carbonated drink is fizzy drink, one of those drinks that have carbonated water. It's called fizzy drink. Pepsi, Coke, Fanta. Those are fizzy drinks. And then the details. A very, very short details why it's better. Moving next would be the second cause of obesity. The second cause of obesity is sedentary lifestyle. Sedentary lifestyle is a lifestyle of modern people now. A lot of people, like, you kind of stick to one posture for a long time. Like you stand for a long time, you sit for a long time. So that's what it's mean by sedentary lifestyle. When you kind of do one posture and stick to it for a long time. Sit for a long time, stand for a long time without any movement or changing the gesture or posture, changing or any movement. So those are sedentary lifestyle. And technically the author explained like, okay, you use children use a lot of computer, play games, this and that, watching TVs, and they technically when they do a lot of that, they don't move a lot. So problems of sedentary lifestyle create obesity, sedentary lifestyle. And for that, yes, the solution for that would be encourage them to do more physical activities. We should encourage them to exercise. Technically, that would be the solution for the second cause. For this essay, since I think the requirements, one of the requirements to write essay is like 250 words, which is, I think the author believe that it's enough just to present two cause and two solutions. However, if you need to write longer, you can have more, like 3 cause and 3 solution. It is possible. And last but not least, the conclusions, the summary. To sum up, it is the clear. So everything here is the summary, which when you talk about cause and solutions essay, you need to provide a summary for cause and solutions. So the cause is unhealthy eating, not enough physical activity. So cause 1, cause 2, and solution is prevent by healthy eatings. This is solution 1, and physical activity is solution 2. So again, summarize everything out. The idea of conclusion paragraph, you need to summarize what you have written. That would be the solution for cause and solution. Okay, how's everybody? Got it? Moving on. Two more. Hold on. Two more. So this is the this is the compare contrast. This one is the compare contrast essay, which is the point by point stops. Following the point by point so compare contrast writing. Okay. Compare contrast. The thesis statements would be the last sentence in the body paragraph again. And the subjects that being compared is mean of communications between the present and the previous one. So the old and the current method of communication. Yeah, that would be the subject. So what they compare, the old way and the new way, or let's say like the current way, present and current way. And in this case, the author said that in this essay, they're gonna talk about similarity, which is about general forms, and also the different as well, which is gonna be about speed and range of communications. So if you this thesis statement is one of those that we call direct thesis statement. This is the direct thesis statement by talking about what the topic and the details, the main ideas. The topic would be present and previous mean of communication, and the details, which is very specific, which is similarity in terms of this form, general forms, and the difference gonna be about speed and range of communication. So again, because of the point-by-point styles, so the number of paragraph would equal to the point of comparisons. Since there are 3 points to be compared, meaning that there are gonna be 3 body paragraph, which is, as we can see, quite good. Oops. So the first one, it's gonna be similarity. So this order start with the word like one similarities in order to help the audience know that we are going to mention about similarities. So one similarity, which is between the two subjects, which is the current and previous method of communications, gonna be about form of communication. This would be the main idea. So the point of comparison would technically be compared to the main idea. And you're gonna see that the details inside talk about like, okay, that's gonna be in the past, what the form of communication being used in the past and what being used nowadays. So start with past and then followed by current. Moving on to the second paragraph. The first paragraph is about similarities. Second paragraph is about differences. So because it's similarities and differences, it's not count. Yes, it's under the same topic, but could come from different category. And with that different category, you will see that the author start the paragraph with transition words to show that, okay, we're gonna shift to the opposite one, which is different, by using words like however. So we see that the second paragraph is something that contrasts to the first one. This is like give the idea, signals to the audience that this thing gonna be different from the previous one. And again, there are many different things, this and that. And the main idea that's gonna be mentioned here would be the speed. And then talk about what happened in the past and in contrast, what's gonna be happening now. So technically you're gonna see that when they talk about like the two subject here, it's past and current. Normally to help the audience see like, okay, this information is about the past, this information about the current one. They often mention the subject. Okay, first, like talk about mention the subject first before providing the details in order to avoid misunderstanding. And so the rest of the paragraph, technically it's the supporting sentence. And then moving on to paragraph number 3. Paragraph number 3 here. So body paragraph number 3, start with the word another. Another significance. So technically words like another. When you start a paragraph with words like another, moreover, in addition, it shows that this paragraph is somehow related to the previous paragraph. Linked, or some people say that it linked to the previous paragraph. Some people call it like it relate. But link or relate here, it doesn't mean that this is provide like the same information. It's actually like provide similar details or details that come from same category. That's why you can start with start a paragraph with another. However, if you're gonna talk about speed again, it would be better just to combine the information with the same previous paragraph. So if you shift to a new paragraph, it would be better to shift to new things, shift to something else, something to mention. But having words like another would help the audience know that, okay, this paragraph would somehow relate to the previous one. And in this case, it's the things that come from at the same category, things that come from same category. And the the main idea here would be range of communication. That would be main idea. And again, what happened in 50 years ago and then today. So you've seen that when the author explained or provided details, the author always start with past and then go to the current. In order to make it easy to read and easy to recognize that if you want to know about the past, read something that, the beginnings is going to be talk about present, the past, and then maybe toward the end going to be about the current method of communication. Last but not least, the summary. In conclusion, method. So the first two sentences would be summary, which the first sentence technically like, okay, it has changed a lot. Say something like it's changed a lot. And then summarize the idea again. When you summarize, then you need to talk about like the similarity, which is form of communications. And then, yes, you need to summarize differences as well, which is the difference would be about speed and range of communications. So summarize the details that what you have wrote as well. Last but not least, there is no doubt that technology will continue to progress in future, and the advanced tools which we use today may one day also become outdated. So one of those sentence, I would say that this is the final comment. Some would say like it's a prediction, or some would say like it's probably like opinion. Some may view this prediction that okay, it will be continue growing. However, one day it might be considered outdated, the current one. Okay, one more to go. I already wrote this one. Okay. This last one is the block. So another compare contrast essay. Compare contrast essay. However, this one gonna be the block organization. And again, the thesis statement would be the last sentence of the intro, gonna be the thesis, which again, this one is the direct thesis statement. First, the subject that being compared is about school and high school and college. So subject 1 and subject 2. And then the topics that going to be compared would be 3 things: structure, teaching style, and grading. So this is the point of comparisons. And again, this is the direct thesis statement. You can use indirect thesis statement for compare contrast as well. However, for some people might concern that it might be confusing. That's why a lot of people go for direct thesis statement when they write the compare contrast. However, indirect, say something like, this is the examine the similarities and difference of college and high schools. And that is okay as well. So if it's indirect, it's going to be, if it's indirect, is the statement, it's going to be, this is the examine the similarities and differences of college and high school. Full stop. That would be indirect. But this one, indirect, with mentioning the point of comparison. First statement, block styles mean that the paragraph would, the number of body paragraph would equal to the number of subjects. Two subjects here, school and college. So subject 1 and 2, and then yes, you can start with either one. In this one, they start with high school first, and then talk about the details, the point of comparison, each one. So structure, lecture style, grade. So, and then after the sentence that mentioned the main idea or mentioned the point of comparisons would follow by the descriptions, explanation, supporting details, all of those. And second body paragraph, because it's the opposite thing. So you can start with like, on the other hand, also, it's possible to start with those because that would be the opposite subject. So you can start with on the other hand, however, but this one they go with the word while. While college, so acceptable. And then again, talk about second body paragraph, talk about the college, which the details start with structure. Point of comparison, the point of comparison start with structure, teaching styles, and then grading. Last but not least, the conclusion paragraph for this one technically provide the summary. So a summary, high school and college are both, okay. High school and college are both, so this one is the conclusion. However, as you've seen from previous paragraph, from previous essay, that most of the time when the author wrote the conclusion, they often start with, in conclusion, to sum up, to summarize. However, this conclusion is actually did not include like in conclusion. They just go like start with like high school and college. This is okay. Again, having signal word like to conclude, in conclusion, it just gives a signal. So let's say like it's an option for you and a tools for you to help the audience know that you are reaching the conclusion. However, if you do not wish to include, like to conclude at the beginning of your conclusions, that is okay. Because if you read like research paper, in the conclusion, they don't include word like in conclusion or to sum up. They tend not to do that. So when you write the conclusion, it's not always need to have words like to conclude, in conclusion. It is a choice. And then, but after that, you need to do the same things. Again, when it's come to conclusion paragraph, you need to summarize what have been written, which is high school and both college of using class. And so technically this one is mentioned about like, what is the conclude by saying like, what is the similarities and difference. So they similar in terms of class and grade, so that is the similarity. There are some similarity in that. And the difference would be structure, teaching method, and gradings would be completely different. So they kind of end up by talk about what is the similarities and what are the difference at the end. Because as you can see with block, you don't see the as the audience, you don't see a clear differentiation, a clear identification of what is the difference, what is the similarities. So that's why at the end, you might consider sum up, like telling the audience what are the similarities, what are or what is the difference that is being mentioned in your compare contrast essay. Okay, and that is everything about everything from the whole book. And I have any questions? So far, so good. So good. Okay, that would be the essay format. So these are the essay, example of the essay. When you write your research, it's also similar to essay. However, it is a long extended version because instead of having one paragraph for your intro, you actually have one big chapter for your introduction. So let's moving on. Let's do one thing before the break. First, we talk about elements. Yeah, we're gonna talk about, let's talk about probably the element, or we take a break. It's wrong. So shifting to the introductions, I hope you got the slide from the email. Okay, first of all, this is a complete idea. It is a complete idea of how your research writing gonna be. Let's say that when we talk about the word thesis, thematic, or independent studies, and compared to the research paper that you read online. If you read the research paper online, if you search for things this and that, you see a research paper online, you're gonna see that the length of those research paper is like about 10 page, about 15 page, or about 20, but never more than 30 page so far from what I've seen, let's say based on me. Normally it's about 10 something or 20 something page, because that is like, some people would say like that is a short version. However, when you write a thesis, when you write a thematic paper or independent study, it's gonna be the kind of extended version of those paper that you've seen like published online. Because the reason I said that, because like, let's say if you do a thesis, taking like, okay, maybe for people from the public health, or well, people from the public health, probably when they write a thesis, they might end up, let's say a thesis, end up with like close to 90 to 100 pages, because it's the extended version. But if you turn those 90 and you want to publish your research, you're probably gonna shorten it down to 10 or 20 something page. So with that, when you start writing your thesis or thematic paper, yes, your detail gonna have to be a lot, because this is a long version. This is an extended version. the reason that a lot of advisors want it to be extended version or the long version or the detailed version, because if you are a first timer doing a research, this is the time that you need to get in details. You need to learn the process in detail. That's why often, most of the time, it's the long version. That's why it's about like 100 pages. And probably you have a lot of graph and table as well. So this is the pictures that conclude everything that you're going to have to be the idea of what it's going to be when you write each chapters. So again, when it's an introduction, as I mentioned in the academic writing one, that when you write the intro, it's going to be a funnel. So start from something broad and then narrow it down. So that essay, again, we use the funnel, the idea of funnel, the upside down triangle, and start with something broad and then narrow it down. And yes, you do the same for the introduction for your research when you write the introduction sections. Start with something broad, narrow it down. And then the sections like section like literature review, it's going to be another section where you try to narrow your details down to the point to what you want to write or what you want to study. However, this one would be for the results and methodology going to be the one which is the very narrow part sections, because this is the section that you it's your own your own details where you're gonna write everything like your method, your results, which is gonna be only you. And in this two chapter, methodology and result especially, you don't need to include a lot of citations. You don't need to, because it's going to be you providing what method you're going to use, how your design going to be, what the results going to be. So with that, you're probably not going to have a lot of citation need to be added in the two sections. However, moving to the discussion section, it's going to be back to the triangle again. However, this time it's going to be a proper triangle. It starts with something like small, which is narrow first, and then the bottom going to be something broad, because it means that when you provide the discussions, normally you start with summarize your results and then comparison to other research studies. Compare your results, contrast your results with the world's, the results from your fields. That's why the bottom of the triangle, it's like a broad versions. You start with something narrow and then compare yourself to others. So that's why it's a broader version. And at the very end, you're going to have a conclusions. In an essay, it's just one paragraph of conclusions. In a thesis, this is a proper one chapter for your conclusions. The acknowledgement here, normally acknowledgement is not like at the end. Normally acknowledgement going to be like very first thing that you see from the thesis. I don't sure, it's probably like the page after the abstracts. Not quite sure. However, definitely after the conclusion, it's going to be reference. Some few use the word reference. Some few use the word bibliography. So bibliography or reference mean the same thing, where you provide the full version of your results. Okay, that is the whole idea of your results, whole idea of your thesis or thematic paper. This is thematic paper, independent study. You do everything according to this, just shorter. So technically, like it's the shorter ones. You're gonna follow the same structure, but maybe the detail is shorter or the method is not that complicated. That what makes thesis and thematic paper differ from each other or the school. First of all, this is the element to be included in your research study. Okay, yes, it's a big picture. So start off with one word that everybody needs to understand what it means, which is quantitative research and qualitative research. Quantitative research is the research that when it's come to the result, you get a number of results. To make it easy to understand what is quantitative. Quantitative research is the one that when you collect the data, when you collect the results, when you report the results, you're going to collect in number forms, which is, for example, when you do something like survey. When you do a survey and you ask people to rank their feelings, that rank their satisfaction level. So you kind of getting a number. And yes, you can analyze using like t-test, ANOVA, SEM, or confirmatory method, CFA, confirmatory factor analysis, Pearson, or Pearson's, or coefficients. What else? There's a lot. So all of those, Wisconsin something, cannot remember the proper name. So all of those are quantitative. To make it easy, like if you conduct a laboratory research and when you collect the data, you kind of write in terms of number, like, okay, it's grow up to 5. Okay, something, if it's number, we say that it's quantitative research. However, if you conduct an interview, focus group, or observations. So when you collect the data, normally you collect by asking questions. And when you ask questions, the answer is going to come in text forms, written form. When you interview, when you conduct the interview, you did not get like number. You ask like, what do you think about that? What is your opinion about this? So your results is actually text. When you do documentary analysis, your results come in form of text. So that means that your research fall under the qualitative research approach. When in the world of research, there are 3 types of research. The first one is quantitative, second one is qualitative, the third one called mixed method research. Mixed method research. When we and the meaning is simple. First one is quantitative. Second one is qualitative. The third one called mixed method. Mixed method means that you conduct both quantitative and qualitative. So that's why we call mixed. Because we use quantitative, we use number results, and we use the text results. That's why it becomes mixed. That is the 3 research design. You probably gonna go. Everybody gonna fall under one of these categories, definitely. You can go for just quantitative, just the qualitative, or the mixed method. That is okay. If that's your choice, if you feel like this is the research approach that's best fit your research, that is okay. So that's the 3 ideas. When it's come to which one is better, I don't think it's depend on what topic you do and what results you want from those questions, or from those research question or research objective. So which which research approach, research design here, research approach it's gonna be, it's depend on your, it's whichever research approach it's gonna be, this depend on your topic and the results you want, as well as depend on the research gap. Because yes, on the same topic, you can do quantitative, you can do qualitative, or you can do mixed method. However, maybe this topic probably more suitable for the mix, this topic probably more suitable for the qualitative, or maybe this topic is the author, the researcher want it to be quantitative. So at the end of the day, whether it's going to be mixed method, quantitative or qualitative, it's kind of depend on several factors. No, you cannot just go on and just, I want to do qualitative. Probably no. Probably it's, you cannot do with that, but when you select which approach it's gonna be, it depends on like which one is more suitable, or which one is like this method it's lack, you know, the gap of research. Since this is the gap, that's why, okay, I go with this. So it's depend on several factors. Oh, I already wrote the word mixed method. Okay. Before taking a break, so I would like to introduce the components that you need, the components that you probably gonna have to include in your introduction chapters. So column in the column in the left side would be one of those that I take it from the science field, and the right one from 1 to the science gonna be 1 to 9, the social science gonna be 1 to 8. However, even though they come from two different fields, but at the end of the day, you kind of have similarity, definitely. So let's take the component here, the component in the introduction as a guideline, because I believe maybe your program, your faculty, the way you do the research might be a bit different. So let's take this as a guideline that most of the time you can have this, but probably not exact. It's okay. So the component that you need to include in your chapter, it should depend on your program as well, or the nature of your research. But let's take this as examples, as a model, as a guideline for you, so you know what it is. So the first thing to start off with the introductions would be the intro. You start off your introduction chapter with the introductions. However, to make it not too confusing, so the intro, we're gonna call it background and rationale of the study. So that would be the intro. There are several things that you need to write, so we talk about that later. Some people call it like background and rationale of the study, or some people call it background and rationale. Some people might go for words like problem statement. So along the way, that would be in the intro. After that, after the backgrounds, you're gonna follow with the research questions and research objective. First of all, when we talk about research question, it means that the statement have to be question statement. So the research question is gonna end with research. Will end with question mark because it's research question. End with question mark. So it's probably gonna be the only question statement you see in your whole research paper, which is the research questions. After the research questions, as you can see, like in research question here, I divide into like quantitative and qualitative. The reason I divide to this one is that some people, for those who do like mixed method, for those who conduct a mixed method, you might have like quantitative research questions and qualitative research questions. However, if your research approach is just quantitative. So you don't need to like have a subheading. The subheading for quantitative research question, qualitative research question is for those who conduct mixed method. For mixed method, you need to have a separate question for the quali and quanti, and some actually have the question for mixed method question as well. So that depends on how you're going to structure it. Then after research questions, followed by with the research objective. The research question, research objective, you can have more than one. Some people might have one research questions, more than one research questions. Some of you might have one objective. Some of you might have several objectives. That's up to you. But when you start your research objective, in English, we always start with the word to examine, to investigate, to measure, to propose, this and that, which normally, if you study in your research methodology subjects, in English, I'm not sure what about Thai, but definitely in English, is that there is certain keyword that you need to include if your research objective is a quantitative one. So there's gonna be certain keyword that you need to use if this is quantitative objective. However, if this is the qualitative objectives, there are certain keywords that should be included in your objective as well to make sure to show that this is a qualitative objective. In English, it's always start with the word to. In Thai, it always start with the word เพื่อ always. Look this way. For the objective, again, you can have one, you can have several objectives, truly up to you. If you conduct a mixed method, your objective, again, might divide into qualitative objective, quantitative objective. That's up to you how you're going to construct it. Or another way of constructing the objective is that construct the objective by divide into general objective and specific objectives. So either it's going to be specific generals, or if it's not going to be both general specific, this is truly depend on your technique on constructing research objective, which you're going to see more in your research objective class, not this one. And after the research objective, we're going to have research hypothesis. Research hypothesis is technically what it's mean by the word hypothesis. It means assumptions. It means that you provide educated guess on the results. Some would say that is research hypothesis. Some of you might have one hypothesis. Some of you might have several hypotheses. Some of you might have no hypothesis. It's possible. Normally, the hypothesis here often come when you conduct quantitative research approach. Quantitative, you probably have a hypothesis. And yes, it's possible that even though you have quantitative, you might not have hypothesis. Yes, that's possible as well. But yeah, this is where you need to decide. After the hypothesis, the next one would be the scope of study. So what is mean by scope? Here I use the word coverage. So the scope of the study is to provide the information on how big your research gonna be, what you're gonna cover, what you're gonna include in your research. That is the scope of the study. For example, you might talk about scope of the population. Scope of the population technically mention like who you will include in this research, because I believe you're probably not going to include everybody or from every occupation. You probably just recruit people from one group, like patients, and not just patients. They probably like obesity patients only, because having patient, the word patient going to be too broad. You need it to be specific. So it's going to be obesity patients, or if you conduct a research on teacher, it might probably like public school teachers. So scope of the population, it means that you talk about like who you're gonna recruit to your research, who, and possibly how many, if you can identify. Scope of the variable would be, again, in some field, I believe when you conduct your research, you probably having variables, something like independent variable, dependent variable, moderate variables. So variables that you study together. So scope of the study, it's mean that what variable you study in your research. Normally would be, if you have like independent, you definitely have dependent variable. So if it's scope of the variable, technically you provide the list of the variables, the independent variables and dependent variables that you study in your research. Scope of the research methodology. So scope of the research methodology is not just stating like quantitative or qualitative. It's going to be more specific. Like if you conduct a mixed method, so what the specific type of mixed method you use. So you might mention like, okay, for the scope of the research methodology for my mixed method, I'm gonna use explanatory research methodology. I'm gonna use exploratory. So, the very specific method of your research. Or I'm gonna go with perspective. Yeah, perspective, right? Or retrospective, something. I cannot remember the property. That would be it in scope. These are the example. Maybe you might have like scope of site as well, like scope of the site. It's mean like, because we're not gonna explore every place, probably like focus your study on certain area or certain place. So the scope, you can go mention the place you study like as well, like this research gonna be conducted in Bangkok metropolitan. So you mention like where you conduct your study, this and that. If you don't have, you don't need to mention. The next one after the scope, for the science field do have like one section which called independent variable. Technically, you talk like provide the list of independent and dependent variable, because the social science don't have section called variable. That's why we write it in the scope. But the science, you have variables as a separate heading. So you can, in the scope, it can be like scope of the population, of the site, of the research. And when you need to mention about variables, you can have another sections below. So for the science field, number 7 gonna be Number 7 gonna be conceptual framework. Conceptual framework, or some people gonna be conceptual framework, some people gonna be theoretical framework. So either way, some of you might call it, because it's depend on your research method again. Some of you gonna be conceptual, some of you gonna be theoretical framework. So where you provide like kind of the pictures, talk about it later. And this one would be the last thing for the social science. Number 7 for science, number 8 for social science, conceptual framework, just different organizations. Number 8 and science fields, number 8, glossary of term and definitions. Social science, number 6, definition of the term. This is what I mentioned last class, which is where you provide keywords and definitions. The definitions that you made up, not make up, that's bad way putting it, that you create, that you tailor, that you customize based on your research topic. Do not copy it from anywhere. You need to do it by yourself. Number 9, usefulness of the study. Science field, number 9. Social science, number 7, called usefulness of the study, or some call it research contributions. Technically, talk about what you how how or why, how your research can benefit the world, benefit to your stakeholder, how your research can benefit your stakeholder. Stakeholder is people who affect and will be affected to your research. Or some would say like the benefits of your research. What benefits your research can make to people around you. The conceptual framework and theoretical framework, it's technically it's how your research connect. It's okay when you, it's actually like it's for the conceptual framework. If you have like IV or DV, if you have independent variables, dependent variables, how independent and dependent relate with each other, link with each other, and you draw it in pictures. Normally we're gonna call it conceptual framework. However, when you draw up your, okay, let me show this to make it easier. I think like some feel it's not, it's very similar. The conceptual framework and theoretical framework, it's the idea, it's quite similar with each other, but it's not technically the same. But the idea is. I actually gonna show this after the breaks, but let's just, then there are questions. There is questions. Fine. Moment. Conceptual framework. Oh, most of mine is a conceptual framework. Right. Okay. So normally, so what is conceptual framework? It looks something like this. Conceptual framework is how your IV or DV link with each other. It would be, I think your research methodology subject teacher would be better explanation than me, definitely. But technically it's how it relates with each other. Like this is IV and this is DV, independent, how your independent and dependent variable linked together, which it's might look or it come in different look. So the how your IV DV link together, it's depend on what IV and DV that you select and how it's linked. So it's probably look something like this. Um, for theoretical framework, normally it's take it from certain theory and then you adjust based on the theory. But I think most of you probably gonna be conceptual framework, not the uh not the theoretical framework. Because normally you will select independent and dependent variables and kind of match them together. So most of you going to be conceptuals, but some of you, if you have like your conceptual framework, it's draw based on certain theory, something like that. I'm not sure whether my explanation is really correct or not, but it's gonna be something like that. My explanation might not be the best one. Yes. I But the idea is that if you match your IV, DV together, it's gonna look something like this. So it's gonna call, like with the line drawing all together, it's gonna be called conceptual framework. Conceptual provide. But if you are this picture is drawn based on like a theory, what theory behind it, then that one gonna call theoretical framework. So I'm not sure my explanation would be the best for this one. So I actually searched. So there are conceptual framework establish a relationship between variables, which your variable, it can be, this is the variables that can occur, not just independent, dependent. You can also have variable like moderating or mediating or control variables. That's also could happen as well. Mediating or moderating, it's like the variables, like mediating is like before this thing, the dependent start from this independent to the dependent, they need to have this mediate. So the middle ground here. So, and you can lead to dependent variables, that is what it called mediating variables. The variables that, like the middle variables that need to have this one in order to lead to this variable. So we call it mediating variables. But I'm not sure about moderating, I'm sorry. But control variable would be one of those for those who conduct experiment. And this is the meaning. So technically, like as we can see, provide theoretical foundation, we're gonna call theoretical framework. But I think most of you is probably still would be about the conceptual framework. Yeah. Okay. Or this one would be the Thai version. Yes, I do shows. Sorry, international student, but I have a lot of Thai students who gonna write that thesis in Thai, so I'm gonna show the Thai thesis how to time as well. Sorry in advance. So this is independent variables, this one, and dependent variables, this one. You can have many independent variables. So these are the many independent variables. Like this one is personal factors, awareness, risk, expectation. So you can have, it is possible that you will, or you might have many independent variables, but your dependent variable, it's always going to be one. You can have just one dependent variables, but for independent, you can have many. So this one is like a very, I would say that this is like a baseline conceptual framework that you're gonna see. Like this is the easy versions, simple version that here are the many. So for each box is like represent one independent variables. So based on this conceptual framework, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5 independent one dependent variable. Normally, when you draw the variable, you draw using square. Yes, you're gonna use the square to draw it. So it's easy and simple. Okay, since we are up. So, okay, before I think I actually gonna show you the whole chapter, the whole intro chapter, just for example, for you to see like how it's gonna be, how it's gonna like. But for now, let's take a break first because it's gonna take some time, and I think some of you, me, I need break time first before my voice go disappear. And for you as well. Let's take a 15-minute break and we will be back at 8:05. 15 minutes approximately. See you after the break. Because when you conduct your research, you probably like select your variables based on your understandings. So like your independent variable, dependent variables, some may have moderate, but normally in master level, we expect you to have dependent and independent variable definitely. So the framework that you can have probably conceptual. But if you conduct your research based on certain theory and you like how it's related with each stats and that, it's going to be theoretical, but I think most of you are going to be conceptual more than the theoretical. Anyway, that's just a quick review. Okay. Before we moving into the detail of how to write the intro, the background, let's say, the background for your research, introduction paragraph. I'm gonna start off with showing the examples of how it's gonna look like. So you see the pictures. This is again just examples. Maybe yours might look a little bit different, okay, but at least you've seen how it's gonna be, because it's not gonna be like look like a research paper, but it's gonna be like extended versions. So that's why I think it's better to show you guys. So this one is start with the chapter. So when you start a new chapter, you start with like chapters and then followed by the number. But the number, we're going to use the Roman numbers. It's going to be I, and chapter 2 going to be chapter and then 2I. So use Roman number. And mine is like chapter 1, and this is the name of my chapter 1. This is the name of my chapter 1. However, if your chapter 1 call different, it doesn't have to be like call introduction, it may call different names, it's okay. So just change the name that you call your chapter 1. And since each chapter you're gonna have several headings, and to make it easy to understand, the first heading gonna be named with like 1.1. The first one here, it's mean chapter. So this is chapter 1. Point 1 is mean this is the first heading of this, chapter. So this is the first one, so I call 1.1 background and rationale of the study. Technically, this is my introduction, but because the chapter called introduction, that's why let's from now on we're gonna call it background to make it easy to understand. So when you write the background, so definitely you can have several paragraphs. For me, I would say that when you write your when you write your background, the minimum would be about 1.5 page. Let's make like 2 page minimum. That's the minimum amount. I've seen 1 3/4. That is okay, but it's super, super short. So I think the minimum level gonna be minimum, would say, based on my experience, based on what I've seen so far, and I feel like it's a good amount. If it's shorter than that, it's probably way too short. But definitely when you conduct a research, it's not a small research. It's not a small project, so you're gonna have something to write definitely. So I think a good amount, not a good amount, the minimum amount would be at least 2 pages for your background. The good amount, I don't know. I cannot tell what would be the good amount for your background because it's truly depend on your topic, on the content that you need to cover. Because some of your topic might have a lot of contents or details, information to write. So your introduction would be, your background might be longer. Yes, your background can be like 5 or 6 pages. It is possible. Yes, it is possible because let's say most people from my program have like 5 pages for the intro. So I don't know why, but it's possible. Then I'm pretty sure it's possible. But yet, in some program, you're gonna see like the intro is about 2 pages. That's okay as well. So again, it depends on the nature of your research from your program or from your field. And in the backgrounds, we're gonna talk about the detail later, but definitely you're gonna divide your detail into several paragraphs. Several means you're gonna have at least 3. Let's say you can have at least 2 paragraphs. Definitely, you can have several paragraphs for your backgrounds. Just for one thing, for each, so this is one paragraph. So this is one paragraph. One thing to point out, when you write one paragraph, especially this is just for the background, just the sake of the background only, every paragraph of your intro has to have citations. Because you're, let's say, if you are, a lot of you probably first timer, so a lot of you probably need to take information from somewhere. So when you take information from somewhere, I would say that you will definitely need to provide citations, provide the reference in your sorry, you will have some kind of reference in your paragraph. Per one paragraph, you should have about 3 reference. That's the minimum from what I've seen so far. I think having 3 citation would be a good number. Maybe 2, but 3 would be the minimum. For each paragraph, you should have about like 3 sources. Yeah, 2 or 3 sources, but definitely it is impossible. Truly, it is impossible that you're gonna write the background paragraph without reference. That's impossible. Trust me, impossible. Or when you go through like research paper, one of those online paper, you're gonna see that every paragraph gonna have several reference, maybe 5, maybe 6 minimums. But let's say for the thesis sake, at least 3 source would be a good start. You might end up with 5, 6, yes, possible, but 3 would be the minimum. 3. And yes, that's applied to all the paragraph in your background. So like 3 here, this is the first paragraph, so 3 here, and then, okay, maybe this is a short one, maybe 1 or 2, it's okay. But if it's like half a page long, maybe at least 3 would be good. So the one that I highlight just to show you that, okay, I have about 3. That would be a good number. But definitely, maybe, yes, it's possible that you're going to have 1 if your paragraph is like 5 or 6 lines. It is possible that you have 1, but definite that every paragraph in the background, you're going to have citations. However, maybe the last one, maybe it's possible that the last paragraph of your background, you might not have any source at all. This is possible because the last paragraph, normally you talk about what you're gonna do in your research, your goal. So this is possible that the last one, you're not going to have any source, possible. However, all the paragraph before the last one, you should have at least 3. 3 would be a good amount, but 2 is still acceptable. Super short one, definitely you should have at least 1 paragraph. I'm sorry, 1 source to cite your information. After that, followed by the research. No, the second heading. The second heading here, I call it research questions. So my research question divide into quantitative and qualitative because myself, this is my research. I provide a mixed method. I did a mixed method research. However, if your research is just quantitative, so you don't need the subheading. So it's just, you can just list the question. If your question is everything is qualitative, everything is quantitative, you don't need a subheading. However, again, if you have something like mixed method, you might have a subheading. So identify that this is a quantitative research question, this is a qualitative. And as you can see, the research question will end with question mark, always. After research question, gonna be research objective. Again, if you conduct a mix, you might have a subheading for quantitative research objective, qualitative research objective, or maybe some of you might construct your research as specific research objective. Oops. And general research objective. So that is another way to construct your research objective as well. So there are several methods to construct it. You might divide based on your research approach or based on like specific or general research question. However, if you don't have like general research question, you have just like research questions, then again, just remove the subheading and then list the research objective. Again, start with the word to, always. And after the word to, it's going to be work. So to study, to compare, to investigate, to examine, to whatever. Normally, like there's keyword. If it's like quantitative, it's going to be to measure, to study, it is to compare. But if it's qualitative, it's going to be to propose, something like that. Proper keywords. There's certain keyword that fit for certain research approach. 1.4, my next heading gonna be research hypothesis. This is one research hypothesis. You can have several research hypotheses. When you make your hypothesis, normally research hypothesis is to make assumptions of how your results going to be, whether it's going to go up better, going to go down. And when you need to make one of those educated guess or assumption, you can refer it back to past study. So let's say my assumption just want to know like whether it's going to go up or down or difference technically. So I say like, okay, my hypothesis is according to this person to previous study, it shows that it's going to go up. So that is my hypothesis. If you need to make one. If you have several research hypotheses, again, it can be something like, okay, you can put number 1 here. So here first, you're assuming. So my first hypothesis is going to be this, then my second hypothesis is going to be this, and that's, you can have several. Some people have 5, some people have 1, some people do not have the hypothesis at all. So again, depend on the design of your research methodology for the research hypothesis. 1.5 is the scope of the study. So again, I start with the scope of the population, like where this who going to be my participants. Scope of population is who going to be my participants, who going to be my subjects, and where. So like this one going to be Generation Y school teachers, and they're gonna be those that in Bangkok. If you know the number, you can include the number. It would be great if you can include the number. And this and that. And then I have a scope of variable, which is related to my research, this and that, so ignore that. Research of methodology. So since it's a mix, so I say that I'm gonna use explanatory sequential method. If you conduct a mix, normally you need to pick like whether it's gonna be parallel, exploratory, or if you conduct like qualitative. So scope of the study might say something like, I'm gonna conduct a narrative, I'm gonna conduct a case study. So what specific method you're gonna use? Specific. Next one, 1.6, the sixth one gonna be definitions of term. So the idea of definitions of term is that you need to identify all the important terms. When I said important, it doesn't have to be like, just technical term. Some people select like the terms here are going to be your independent variables can be included as part of your definition of term. Your independent variable, your dependent variables, or your participants, you probably provide definitions for that. Because let's say my, here, I say that. So I actually like provide like my participants like, okay, generation Y. So I provide meaning for this. Or some people, I've seen one people, the definition of terms have something like words like gender. Yeah. It can be it doesn't have to be complex technical term only. The glossary, the definitions of term can include simple words as well. Which like this person's the definition of term include like words like age and gender because this is his independent variable. The reason that it's important to provide meaning for age and gender is that like the word gender is like this person that naturally gender of the staff male and female because maybe in your research you might divide gender into more category like male, female, others, maybe in 3 groups, or maybe like male, female, LGBT. So in the LGBT and or more, who knows? So it doesn't have to be just technical. It can be simple as like gender, and my gender are gonna divide into 2 groups. Or okay, in my age, in terms of age, I'm gonna divide in terms of years. So that's why it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple ones like educational levels. But normally, basically, when you provide a glossary of term, it's often where you provide definitions of your independent variables and dependent variables and probably other important terms to you. Or the meaning to your participants. Like, for example, I use the word generation Y. So my meaning gonna be like generation Y, it's mean the people who born within this year to this year. Because when we interpret the meaning of generation Y, there's a lot of interpretations. So in this case, so when you provide the meaning from your glossary, make sure that this meaning is customized, is tailored based on your research project. As I mentioned, like because like there are many people who define the year for generation Y. So when I provide the meaning, for the meaning of generation Y, I provide the year that I use for my generation Y. I use for my research. So be specific and make this meaning reflect your research. Like this one, it's gonna be 2 group or smoking. Yeah, smoke as simple as like smoking information of the staff. Yes. Yeah, that's that. after that, after the definitions of terms, okay, after definitions of terms, gonna be research contributions, which for the research contribution, you can write in number, which is like this. Just draft it out first. I know you probably like, I don't sure whether it's gonna be my contribution or not. Just draft it out first. You can come back and redo or rewrite or paraphrase it later, no worry. But for now, when you need to write chapter 1, just draft your contribution first, maybe like 3 of it, at least like 3. You should have like at least 3 contributions. You can do it. About 3, and you can put in number like a short one, like this one, or you can be like a little bit longer, like paragraph with something like this in terms of the contributions. Contributions mainly think about the benefits. What benefits your research can make to the world, to the people, to your participants, to your stakeholders, to what? And yes, one of the research contribution can be saying that like this is going to be a new knowledge, a new update information to the field, to the current situation, to the current data. Yes, possible. Or benefit for the future research. Yes, that's possible. And last but not least, maybe the organization might be different, but this one I based on mine. So the last one that I include in my research, my chapter 1, is conceptual framework, which is I select certain variables and draw it together, how it links with each other. Normally, when you draw a conceptual framework, it should be in square, not circle. It should be in square. However, this thing, it shows in circle because of the research method that if you use this method, if you use CFA, confirmatory factor analysis, it's gonna have to be in circle. But normally it should be in like box. And one thing when you draw the conceptual framework is that, oops, please look at the line. Ding, 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 ding. When you draw the line and the arrows, so as you can see, let's say like the box, how the box at the top link to this one. So I draw the arrows. One thing is that when you draw the arrows need to attach precisely, no space between the line, the arrows, and the box. So you can see that there's no space. So box, arrows, and the top of the head of the arrows should be quite directly attached to the next box. So that's how you draw the conceptual framework. Make sure the line link precisely. No space in between the box and the line, other circles. And when you draw the conceptual framework, the easiest way is to hand draw. To hand draw it and discuss with your advisor first. After you finalize it and you believe this is going to be the last version, then you can draw on this thing, because it might take a little bit of time to draw on here to make it precise and exact. So I would suggest that during your talk, during the figure it out mode, when you need to draft out, you might draft out with handwritten version first, because it's easy. You can do it like in seconds, but this take like minutes to do it. After you finalize it, or maybe it might not be the final one yet, but we're probably close to the final, you might start draw it in your this thing on the word. And to draw the conceptual framework, it's actually simple, is that it's actually gonna, when you draw it, I'm sorry. when you need to draw it, technically go to insert. And the option that you're gonna use to draw it is super simple, that use the one called shape and the text box. Yes, that's how you draw it. You use the text box and arrows and lines to connect the box. If you draw in word processor, you don't need to fancy equipment. You can use like go to insert, shapes, box, which is text box, line, and arrow, and you can do it everything. And yes, you can draw in, however, I do have the link. Wait, if you don't want to draw using this, I do have an app. No, the webs that you can draw the conceptual framework, which simple and easy to draw as well. It's called App Diagram. Yes, I will share the link for you. Open. Yeah, I shared it with my group. Yeah. So this one is, I do send you like 4 links, which the 4 of these here are the 4 that being recommended to be used for drawing conceptual framework or drawing theoretical framework. But for me, I think the first one is the easiest one to use. Normally, you just can if you want it to be square. So here, let's connect really different. So just pick the square and then it's pop up and then you can just move. And then if you need an arrow or like a box after that, so play with it. It's super easy to draw. So it's super, super easy. I think it's even easier than using the word processor one. And after that, just copy and put it in your work. So should be super easy. But another would be like Lucid Chart, toggles, which is should be great, and creatively should be a good option if you want to use more colorful to draw. To draw the conceptual framework, but normally we stick to the simple one. When you draw a conceptual framework, it doesn't have to be colorful, it's just black and white, no need of colorful things. So that should be about it. And that would be the examples of how it's gonna look like for your introduction chapter, which is technically the same for Thai. For Thai, you're gonna all start like same thing, chapter 1, introductions, and then start with rationale of the study 1.1, and then intro, background. This one have like 5 pages. And then there we go, 1.2, research questions. This one is research questions. And 1.3, research objectives. Start with general research objective, followed by specific research objective. And then 1.4, research hypothesis. 1.5, scope of the studies, just in Thai. 1.6, glossary of term. 1.7, conceptual framework. Normally, when you draw the conceptual framework, try to make it fit in one page. Like this one, because it cannot, this person cannot fit on one page. So you can start a new page and draw the conceptual framework. And as you can see, you're gonna see like this is the title, conceptual framework. And as you can see, conceptual framework, this is 1.7. And the details here, technically it's explained how your independent and dependent variable link with each other. Or when it's talk about like, okay, independent variables come from what theory? Do you have a theory? Do you apply certain theory behind your independent and dependent variable or not? So you might have a short descriptions explaining about the conceptual framework as well. So yes, it is possible. I already sent the slides to your emails. I don't hope everybody got it. The slides for chapter 1 to your email, but anyway. Oh, oh. Oh my God, wait. Sorry. Wrong group, wrong group. Wrong group, wrong group. No. What? The slides, it's the introduction and literature review slide should be already shared to your email just in case. But just in case again, so I shared to the group as well. So that would be the overview for your introduction chapters. And before we end, so I think it would be better to go through this. So you might have, it probably take longer. And that would be the overview for the intro I'm sorry, the introduction chapter. Yes, the introduction chapters. Overview. The organization, what comes first, what comes second might look a little bit different, which is okay. You might have more than one, 6 headings or 8 headings. I'm not sure. It's kind of depend on the nature of your research or how your program conduct the research. So it might be a little bit more, a little bit less. It should be okay. But just the idea of how it's gonna look like, so that's what it shows. Okay, before the end, I would like to end with this thing. So you might have time to do the introductions. So when it's come to the background and rationale of the study, so technically the introduction for your research, but we call rationale of the study, the background. When you write the background, there are 3 things that you need to talk about, that you need to write, that you need to include in your research, in your background. 3 things. The first thing called establish a research territory. Establish a research territory. Technically, it's mean what has been done, or some people like provide the background of your research. No, what have been done in your research? What are the current situations about your topic? What are the current situation about your topic? What are the 5 years? How about what happened like 5 years, 10 years, the general problems, the current problems, impact. Technically, you talk about like, okay, based on this topic, the current situations, this is what are the current situation, what it means, what are the current situations. before we're gonna reach the conclusion of what you're gonna do, first you need to lay the ground. You need to provide some kind of background. So with that background, I would suggest like talk about what are happened currently, what have been done so far, what have been done, what are the current situations. Yeah, so that's why they call what has been done so far in your research, in your topic. For the foundation, so number one, some people call it move one or number one here. When you write it, you probably have at least one paragraph point, definitely. The overview of what happened now, it might be talk about, it can be like what happened now in terms of based on like the world record, the world statistics, that's okay, or the country statistics, that is okay as well. So what have been done, what are the current situation worldwide, nationwide, or locally, you can mention all of that. Yes, when you talk about what have been done, you should back it up with evidence, number, fact, statistic. And for this section, you're definitely going to have at least one paragraph for it. And this section, you can also talk about like definitions, cause, effects, whatever it necessary, that is possible as well. Whatever you seem like this is sufficient, this is great to include in the background. Because this section is going to be the part where you provide the foundation, the fundamental understanding of your topic for your audience. So whatever needed to understand, so technically whatever needs to be understand first, the baseline, the base thing, the fundamental thing, so they know and can better understand your research. So you include in this section. And then after that, after the first number one, you move to a number two here. Move to a number two here, gonna be the gap of knowledge. For the gap of knowledge here, I don't have a long slide. The gap of knowledge technically talk about the reasons or the reason why you need to conduct this research. Gap of knowledge. Talk about the reason why, or maybe the need of conducting this research, which it can be just one sentence. Yes, it's possible to be one sentence because a lot of research actually write when they talk about the gap, it's just like one sentence, like one short sentence. It is possible. Yes, it is possible. It can be a paragraph, it can be one sentence. That is okay. But every research should mention the gap of knowledge. Research before the year 2000s, not many of them mention the gap. But I believe now and like those research published after the year 2000 always mention about the gap. And I think it's worthwhile for you guys to mention the reasons, the gap of knowledge as well. Because the gap of knowledge gonna be, the answer for the question of why this research should be conducted. When your research committee asks you, why should you conduct this research? And the answer is like this thing, the gap. Because there's a lack of this and that, because of this, so the gap of knowledge. However, one thing, before you can reach to the gap, you probably need to read a lot first. You need to go through many research because before you can the gap of research, technically, like it's a sentence that you kind of summarize up. You sum up based on what you have read from the current and from the past research. So this sentence, even though it's just one sentence, but before you can read to this one sentence, you need to read through a lot of research first. You need to know your ground. You need to know your topic a lot before you can kind of sum up and make that, okay, this is going to be the gap of research. So go through a lot, read a lot before you can reach the gap. It can be one sentence, it can be one paragraph. This is up to you. Last but not least, the third one, which is occupy the niche or talk about like what the present research gonna do. Normally, if it's research paper, one of those online ones. If it's a research paper that you've seen online, the third part gonna be where the researcher mentioned the research objective or research question, where they talk about research objective or research question or both of them. However, thesis, thematic, independent study, we are the extended version, the long versions. So in the third part here, you can also mention about like why you choose to study this independent variable, why you should study, why it needs to study with this independent variable, why it would be great to study with this participant, why it should be study in generation Y teachers. So it's going to be the section that where you provide the reason to why this material should be studied, why this location should be studied, why we need to focus our research in Bangkok, why not in Chiang Mai, why it has to be Bangkok. So this is a section where you kind of include the reason why it should be this IV, why it should be this DV, participants, why this locations, or why we should conduct a case study instead of survey. So the why section. This is why you're gonna be like extended. That's why we have this. But if you've seen online research paper, it's just gonna be research question. So research objective or research question. So you can be a little bit more extended version. So why? This section, again, section number 3, it's definitely gonna be like one paragraph for it. You're gonna have like definitely one paragraph. You can have more than one, but definitely one. So in total, that's why I think everybody should have like the intro, the background, sorry. You're definitely going to have two, okay. Let's say you're gonna have 2 or more than 2 paragraphs for your background. One for the first one and one for the last one, which is occupy the niche. The second one, the gap can be one sentence, which you might attach with the number 1 or attach with number 3. But you're definitely going to have at least 2 paragraphs. However, realistically, you probably have more than 2. But okay, let's say about the minimum. I did not say the maximum because I don't know. Because I don't know what topic you're gonna write, how detailed it's gonna be. So I don't want to make an estimation for the maximum because I don't know. And I don't think anybody can tell you like the maximum as well. Normally, the best that we can get is the minimum. The maximums, or some might ask like, so how long should my background should it be? How long should it be? The answer is that when your background saturate is like when you include sufficient, when you include enough details, that is when it's, that is a good amount. But at the end of the day, that's why nobody can say like, what should it be? The shortest one. Yeah, the maximum one. Nobody knows because we don't know how detailed you're gonna be, how long it's gonna be. So skip this. So again, this one is like the detailed version. You can have a look. So again, this one I mentioned when I chose you the examples. When you write the background for each paragraph, make sure you have at least like 3 words. One would be 2 source, but make it 3. And for the reference for the intro, make sure most of your reference, most of your source should be within the 5-year gap. 70%, let's say, 60 to 70% of your source should be within the 5-year gap. However, some of it can be a little bit older. But if you're going to take something old than 5, keep it under the 10-year gap would be better. And the easiest source that you can provide is that the source that come from previous study. It can be website, it can be book, it can be, but I think so far the easiest one would be previous study, the source that come from previous study. Okay, this just a sample phrase for you to include in the number 1. So provide the foundations. I don't think you're gonna probably need it, but just anyway. Establish a research territory. And number 2, this is the meaning. So we're gonna go quite fast on this one, just a quick run through. This is indicate the gap of knowledge. So when we talk what it's mean by gap of knowledge, some people call it like gap of knowledge, some people call, what is it? Yeah, this is called gap of knowledge. Yeah, I think you call it gap of knowledge. Knowledge gap of knowledge is the same thing. So or some people say like research space. So what it means is that talk about what shows what have been done and what has not been done, or the knowledge gap of knowledge talk about what has not been done technically. And when you discuss about the gap of knowledge, the gap of knowledge can divide into 4 big groups. Some people divide it into like 6 groups, but I think I divide it to 4 groups, kind of conclude everything into 4 groups. The first type of gap of knowledge is about the lack or insufficient research, which means that it's not enough study on specific topic like this study have been conducted in generation Y. However, it's not yet conducted in generation X. So which is the reason why my topic gonna conduct in generation X, which is this is called population gap. Population gap or demographic gap. It means that past research already conduct in this group, but haven't conduct in another group. We call population or demographic gaps, or some would say like maybe it like can be site as well, not just populations. This research has been conducted in the northern but never in the southern part of the country, so that can be demographic gap. Methodology gap, which under the first one, which is insufficient because like they use quantitative to collect the data, but never use the qualitative gap. So those are methodological gap. Certain gap have been used, but certain method have been already used, but this one have not. So your research objective would be using this method that never been used to collect the data before. So that methodological gap. Knowledge gap is, maybe like the knowledge, this research has been done, but it's done like 20 years ago, which the data might be called as outdated. So that would be, and because it had been conducted like 20 years ago and the data is already outdated. The world has been changed. That's why we need to conduct a new research, which is called knowledge gap. The second type of gap of knowledge would be controversy or lack of understandings. Lack of understanding would be like a conflicting fighting. Conflicting fighting, it means that when one, let's say, maybe like researcher A found that the result of this thing show positive, but researcher B found that with this thing, they found the result show negative. So when one found negative and another one found positive, it means that the result is conflicting. So we don't know which one to believe. That's why we should do it. So that is called conflicting gaps. Or some research in the past might already conduct this type of research, but the result is unclear. And with unclear or not sure, so my reason is there's a lack of understanding. Third one, limitation of previous research. Limitation of previous research. It means that possibly previous gap, they have some kind of problems when they conduct a research. They might have some flaws. Flaws like have problems technically, have problem when they conduct a research. Maybe the sample size probably too small, or maybe the results when they collect the data, they have like heavily number, the participant is heavily come from one gender, like 80% come from males and 20% come from female, which might not be a good reflection of the results. So that's flaw as well. Or when they analyze the result, there comes some kind of inconsistency, something. So that is limitation. The problems that past research, when they conduct the research, they have problems, and those problems affect the results, which make the result might not, consistent, might not be as generalized. It cannot generalize back to the big groups, or it's not a good representative, something. So those problems would fall under group 3. The gap of knowledge under group 4 is that specific problem needing solutions. So the fourth one is that when you conduct a research that probably relate to real world issues that has not been yet effectively addressed. Let's say one of the obvious one is research about COVID. Before COVID, we don't see a lot of research about COVID, and nobody focusing or concentrating on doing research about COVID. However, after COVID, when COVID hits, you're going to see a lot of research about COVID, which is those research fall under this group, is that this topic is not officially that people in the past study about it, but not many or not enough. So that's why we need to study about it. Or problems that not a lot of people study about it. Like I've seen issues about maybe issues about like migrants, not migrants, or issue like topics that is like not a lot. Like I see like flower, certain species of flowers that very rare, and because it's very rare, nobody study about it. So the flower can be one of those topics that you study, and it's gonna fall under this category of the gap. So at the end of the day, I would say that when you write your gap of research, it's often fall under one or two category based on the state. But at the end, most research you've seen so far, I think a lot of people probably fall under number 1. And some of you probably gonna be fall under number 1, which is the one that there is a lack of study it probably has studied before, it happened before, but it's not enough. So your gap of research might be fall under the first one. But yes, you might fall under group 2, 3, and 4. Everything is possible. Who knows? And here are the sample phrase that often include when you write the gap of knowledge. So I'm gonna go a quick skip. And 3 gonna be truly for number 3, it's gonna be number 3 gonna be like objective. Yeah, again. Normally it's gonna be objective. However, when it's come to yours, you probably include the reasons of why as well. I'm sorry that I go a little bit over the time because I want you to have some time to do this. So because this might take, one of the things that you should be able to do is that you should be able to identify move 1, 2, and 3. So again, in the introductions, if you recall, in the introductions, in the introduction, in the background. So we're gonna have 3 things, right? Establish a territory. The second one is occupy the niche. And the first one is establish a territory. Second one would be the gap of knowledge. And the third one would be occupy the niche. So based on the provided introductions here, again, I don't expect you to write. So let's start. What I want you to do is to, based on 1 to 10 here. So identify move number 1. So move 1. Move number 2, which is gap of knowledge. And move number 3, which is the objective, research objective. This is the 3 things I want. At least you should be able to do this, because you need to have this 3 in your research as well, in your background as well. There are about 5. Four. So it's going to be this one, introduction 1, introduction 2. I want you to leave you with this because you're going to have some time to do it. Introduction 3 and introduction 4, if you can. It's a quick to do it. Introduction 1, introduction 2, introduction 3. Try to identify move number 1, establish the need. Technically it's the background. Let's use the word overview or background, the same thing, but just to make you not confusing. Move number 1, the overview. Move number 2, the gap of knowledge. And identify move number 3, the objective. Which sentence is move 1, which sentence is move 2, which sentence is move number 3. Try to identify it. And we will go through it tomorrow. Sorry for going a little bit over the time. Try first if you have any questions, so I can answer them tomorrow. I have 50 slides. I have 50 slides. Sorry. The rest of the detail this one is like very detailed thing, so I can leave for you to read if you want. If you can't, not just one, can't. It would be great if you can't. a topic. It's act my slides act as a book at the same time. That's why a lot of things. So try to identify move 1, 2, 3 for introduction 1, introduction 2, introduction 3, and 4 if possible. Just a quick read. It's a quick read. Trust me, we can do it in a minute. It's not gonna take hours, but only minutes. That would be about it. Any questions? Tomorrow I will go through the homework, take home homework first, and the rest of the slides, and probably the reference, and possibly the reference. And okay, let's have a look at the time. But download the slides from the email as well. It's gonna be about this week. I'm gonna cover introduction and literature review. So download the slides, but anyway, just in case I send to your group as well. Okay. That would be, but probably gonna tomorrow is probably gonna be. Let's have a look at the time. Decide what I'm gonna teach based on the time. If I don't, yeah, because chapter 2 have a lot to go through as well. The first 2 weeks gonna be quite heavy, but after that's gonna be lighter, so easier. That would be it. Any questions? Okay, let's stop